All right, JD, we should be live, and I see two
I
viewers in the chat.
see. Yeah, I see us. I see us. And I see your screen and I see you twice. Who's in the chat? I only see one watching. It might be me.
Yeah, it went down to one. It probably is you. Let's talk about just while people roll in. Let's just talk about kind of our chess study plans going forward. Doesn't have to be necessarily what we're doing now, because I know I'm not doing really anything. But what do you want to do for your chess study going forward?
so I was reading this book that's okay, honestly, it's like a fantasy novel, but in this novel appears a game that's like the way they describe it, it sounds like a chess-like game. And they were talking about the goal, and they were saying that the goal is like not to win, the goal is to play a beautiful game. And I think that I want to have that philosophy going forward in my attempts to play chess, because I think the pressure of like trying to play well or trying to win is like really stressful, and I think counterproductive to chess. And like, further example, like there's this kid that comes to the chess club on Tuesday nights that I was playing, and he played the hillbilly against me actually. and um, and one of the other chess players who's there, who's maybe the third highest rated player, he told him, he was like, "Yeah, you need to play an adult opening." And he's like, you really should be playing, adult openings. He kept using that phrase, adult openings. And
Mhm.
I was giving kind of the opposite advice. I was telling him that, if I could redo my chess career and start over, that I would probably try to have spent more time playing wacky, crazy gambits and super weird stuff. Because I think that it gives you like a good foundation of dynamic play. And he was arguing with me, and finally I kind of settled the argument as like, well, chess is a game, and I think he should do what makes him have fun. And so I I feel like that's probably the direction I want to go with my chess study, is to do things that I find interesting and entertaining and enjoyable, rather than this awful grind that ultimately always leads to burnout. Like I can grind pretty seriously and do some pretty hard and frustrating things, but only for so long, and then I reach burnout.
Yeah.
So I think honestly, what I want to do for my chess study plan is like, I still pretty firmly believe that I want to base it around my own games, and I want to base it around the openings that I play and I find interesting. And I don't really want to go and try to learn new, like completely new systems, but I just want to like find games that are interesting, that are in the lines that I play, and just review those games and try to appreciate them, and find enjoyable moments and get those little sparks of things that like I find interesting. And I think that's really what I want to be doing, rather than studying things that are atrociously horrible. Or I mean, this might be more of a mindset thing rather than an actual material thing.
Yeah. I think just having that mindset of, enjoying what you're doing, not getting burnt out, and looking to improve along the way, like just having that process set, looking
Mm-hmm.
to improve along the way, but not being too caught up in the results, I think is a very healthy long term mindset for chess and for a lot of things. So I really like that. And I think, focusing on your own games and your own openings is huge too, because there was a study linked in our Discord, and essentially that's what the study found. If you kind of like follow your own opening lines and your own types of games, that's the most efficient path to improvement.
And it just makes sense, because like trying to like trying to go super broad, and especially when you're like just trying to like, because feel like that ultimately a lot of chess is um we're just memorizing things, or not memorizing, but like developing things that we know and understand. I like to give the analogy of learning chess is like learning a language, and like the pieces that you see on the board are like words, and it's important to learn words that are useful to you. Like if I'm trying to become a better English speaker, then spending time learning German is probably a waste of time.
Yeah, there's an interesting book that I'm reading, but very slowly. It's not my favorite read, but I get tidbits out of it. It's called
Yeah.
Range,
Okay.
and it kind of talks about specializing in one thing versus being a generalist and doing a bunch of things and drawing from those experiences.
Yeah.
But I always like keep trying to relate it back to chess somehow too. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I found interesting was it talks about how when you have like a bunch of flashcards to study, for example, if you study the flashcards in the exact same order every single time and they're like based on categories,
Yeah.
you don't do as well in terms of generalizing it across other topics compared to if you just, do that same set of flashcards but do them completely random. Um,
Yeah.
and I found that interesting because like we always talk about the woodpecker method and it's something that I've been into myself,
Yeah.
but what do you think about that in terms of, playing different types of chess openings and doing a whole bunch of different things with chess training and see if they can generalize?
So there's another book that I really really enjoy and highly recommend. It's called Peak, and it's by Eric Anders, or Anders Ericsson, or Eric Anderson. I can't ever remember which way it is, but it's a really phenomenal book. He's like the world's foremost expert on experts, and he he studied a lot of top performers in many different fields, including chess. But he was talking in this particular example. He was talking about baseball and batting specifically, and even more specifically, learning to hit curveballs. And so they were looking at players who were practicing hitting curveballs, and they would just have a pitcher who would just throw curveball after curveball after curveball, and they would get fairly proficient at hitting curveballs. But then when they tried to translate that to real world experience, like in an actual gameplay, they didn't ultimately get that much better at hitting curveballs,
Mm,
which is surprising because you're like, well, I just hit 1,000 curveballs. Why am I not better at hitting curveballs?
right.
And in that practice scenario, they did improve, but not in the real world scenario. And the issue that they came up with was that when you know the curveball's coming, you can get better at hitting it. But what they didn't get better at was recognizing when the curveball was going to happen. And a much, much more effective way to get better at curveballs was to have the pitcher throwing a variety of pitches with some curveballs sort of randomly thrown in.
I-
And then that's apparently the best way to get like better at curveballs, because part of learning to do that is recognizing when it's going to happen. And so I feel like that's the same thing that you're talking about in a different context.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. If I'm only training a specific thing, how do I get ready for the other things that might be thrown at me in the real world?
Another example, I mean, a way to translate that to chess might be like, I'm doing hundreds of tactics puzzles, but then I get into a game and I'm not any better at tactics. Well, probably what you need to do is look at hundreds of positions that maybe don't have, some of them have tactics and some of them don't. And so you can learn to recognize that time when it's like, oh, there's might be a tactic here, and recognizing the shape of a position that requires some sort of tactical view. Like if you give me almost any position and tell me there's a puzzle, or tell me there's a tactical solution to it, there's a good chance I can work it out eventually.
Hmm.
But you give me a game scenario where I don't know whether or not there's one, the chances are much less likely that I'm going to find it.
And I agree with you. And I like Ariel's comment in the chat. He said, so playing games is the major tool for improvement, right?
Almost certainly.
And
I feel pretty convinced that like playing and then reviewing after you've played is probably ought to make up the highest bulk of your chess study.
yes,
Uh, I don't think I don't know that blitz because I feel like that you need time to actually like well I guess I don't know, it depends on what kind of chess you want to play. Again, we go back to you should be having fun, and if playing slow chess isn't fun, then you probably shouldn't do it. But if your goal is to get better at classical time control chess, I think that's what you need to be doing, because like if you're playing blitz and you're making like instinctual decisions, you're not really thinking about it. um I don't think you're like what you I think what you need to do is to have a game where you spend time thinking, and then afterwards you figure out why your thinking was crap. But if you didn't have any thinking, then you have nothing to like fix, because
yeah. Yeah, I think it depends on your goals. If your goal is to get better at, let's say, 5-minute chess, I would recommend playing the bulk of your time with 5-minute chess and then maybe trying a little bit of 3-minute and a little bit of 15-minute. So you kind of come at it from all angles. But I agree. I think number one is play, and number two, and Safuya said this in the chat, analyze those games. If you want to just do those two things, play a bunch and review your games, you probably can get away with doing nothing else until you plateau for a long stretch.
yeah, I I agree, and I think that it's important. Like, if I could have like the ideal situation, it would be like play a game, and then I spend time on my own, maybe with or without a computer, trying to like understand what I did. And I don't think it's enough to like have a computer tell you the best move. I think you need to see what the computer says the best move is, and then I think you need to create some sort of sentence in your head that explains what you why that move is better than your own, and then ideally you would then go find a much stronger player who would like confirm, because like
Yeah.
almost always it's your thinking and what you're telling yourself about the position that controls what move you made, and you need to like be making the right you need to have the right kinds of thoughts about the position in order to reach the right kind of move. Like if you're looking at something and you think like, oh, I wanted to attack on the king side, and so you'd start doing wild maneuvers there, but that's sort of ridiculous. Like because the position doesn't call for it. Like your thinking about the position led you down the wrong path. And I think that you probably want a stronger player to sort of help you know what kind of thoughts and thinking you should be having about this kind of position.
And we're getting some instructive comments in the chat as well from Ariel and Safuya saying using takeaways and sort of figuring out those common flaws in your games can even take that a little bit to the next level, because I agree with you. You want to have a sentence for the things you're doing wrong. And if you tell yourself that sentence in your mind, hopefully that starts to build in your intuitive play. Because like Magnus said in his interview, so much of chess is just intuition, as we know. If you're
Yeah.
super strong in classical, you're going to be super strong in blitz too, in terms of
Yeah.
just spotting good moves. So yeah, we want to find ways to sort of rewire our brains, which is hard to do. But a lot of times, like let's say I castle too late.
Yeah.
I might castle too late like every 5 games, and it's just going to take a lot of mistakes of castling late before I actually get it and figure out how do I implement that in my own games.
And that's also why I think slow games are probably important, even if your goal is to improve at fast games. Because doing
Yeah.
something slowly gives you the opportunity to start developing these thought patterns. And when you need that time to like actually think about this, and after you've done it slowly enough times, it then goes from like actual cognitive thought to intuition. Because I mean, intuition is just generalized cognitive thinking. Like you've done it enough times, you no longer have to think it. It just feels right now.
Yep. All right, should we jump into the study plans?
Sure.
Okay, I see Safuya is in the chat. Let's
Yeah,
start.
Thinking Fast and Slow is a great book. I love Daniel Kahneman.
Oh yeah, that's such a thick book. Did you read the whole thing?
Twice.
Oh my gosh, I read half of it. Jesse loaned me his copy. I read half of it, and then
Yeah.
kind of turned into a coaster after that. But I really liked it.
Well, I'm a huge fan of behavioral economics, so I've basically every sort of popular piece of fiction around behavioral economics I've read at least once, if
It is
not more.
fascinating. Yeah. Ariel said it's a tough one. All right, so Safuya playing 25 hours a week on chess. This is super impressive. Safuya, let us know in the chat, what's your long-term chess goal? Which ratings do you want to achieve, or what are your long-term goals? Okay, playing fast, 2%. Not part of the plan, but have some random games at the local club. And I think that's showing that the plan is improve at slow chess, which is fine. 2% fast, perfectly fine. You agree?
I couldn't possibly disagree.
Playing slow, 30%. Okay, so one thing is jumping out at me already. And this is why I kind of asked for the percentages. If you add up the playing fast and slow, we're looking at 32%. And it looks like these are probably adding to 100% if you include everything.
Yeah.
I would probably right off the bat be thinking, let's play more games just based on the data that we've analyzed. I think when you're a brand new player, you can play somewhere between 75 and 95% of the time to improve. And then as your rating goes up, that playing percentage drops. And I think around master level, it's about 50-50. And as you go above master, the playing percentage goes below 50. So that's the first thing I'm thinking. Maybe play more chess is something that could be beneficial for faster improvement. What do you think?
I again, I totally agree. Like to not to get into too much of a hot topic, but there's been a lot of discussion about Hans's rise to, he's shot up over 2,700 recently. And in the last year or so, he has, in so 365 days, he's played roughly 250 classically rated games. So that's almost a game, 2 games every 3 days. And if that's what you're doing, then like you don't have, he's clearly not spending that much time on anything else comparatively. Because classically rated game, he's spending like 3-4 hours on these games. And then I suspect that in addition to the 3-4 hours, he's probably spending close to that much time reviewing those games. And yeah, I do think that that's probably the bulk of what he's doing. And we've seen a significant rating improvement in over the board chess for him.
Yeah. And Safuya did say in the chat, no specific goals, want to get to 1450 chess.com rapid by end of the year and keep the ECF and Lee Chess Classical above current levels. Okay, so let's keep moving down the list. Openings, maybe 5%. Yep, this is good. Adding to chessable training lines. Whoops. When you don't have a move already in there. And JD does that same thing. I think that's really good. Fast tactics, 15%, and slow tactics, 5%. Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, I think for me, slow tactics is probably more important than fast tactics. Like, and the reason I say this is because almost any tactical position, I almost immediately can tell you the right idea. So I have that, like I've developed that intuition to like understand like where the tactic is happening. but what I need to improve at is to get better at the actual brute force calculation. And fast tactics, I feel like, are mostly training you to recognize where the general tactic is in the position rather than actually the deep calculation.
And you can base that a little bit on where you find your own weaknesses are. So for
Yeah.
example, when I'm playing slow chess, my calculation is bad. I know my calculation is bad. It's not as good
Yeah.
as it was at one point in my chess career.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm serious about my chess, I'm going to do more slow tactics than fast for sure. More calculation exercises.
And I think like maybe a way you can sort of choose where you lie is like when you look at it, when you look at a puzzle, like do you have zero idea where the tension is in the position? Because if you have zero idea, then maybe you should spend more time on quicker tactics like the like puzzle rush kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that if you start to recognize the ideas quickly, then but you're still struggling to actually solve the nuts and bolts of it, then I think spending time on slower puzzles is probably the way to go.
I think that's good advice. Sophia said, problem is each game along with analysis after takes 8 hours. So needs more time to increase. Yeah. I think so. One
Eight
thing I should
hours.
note is Sophia is spending 25 hours a week on chess. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're spending, let's say, 7 hours a week and 33% is playing, maybe that's not enough. But at this point, Sophia is already playing 8 hours a week. So in a way, you could almost think of the in-depth analysis as being extra credit in a way, in terms of our study plans. So I think that's okay. But if you have time, I would recommend adding in some blitz, Afuya. Maybe 5 to 10%. And using that as just a quick review for takeaways or a quick review for openings. Play a little faster and a little slower is the idea, with your goal being rapid, which is in the middle. Strategy 0%, crossover with game review. I think that's good, using your own
I
games.
I do think that like probably your strategy, if you're spending that much time on game review, I don't think you need to feel bad about not having some sort of dedicated strategy session. Like again, I think that your strategy study should be in the context of your own games, which means it's necessarily going to happen in your game review.
Yeah, and it's probably better than reading a strategy book in a way, especially after a certain point where you kind of have the basics down. Strategy from your own games makes a lot of sense. All right, Endgame's 8%. Shereshevsky's Endgame Manual, Chapter 4 at the moment. I think that's good. That's just about the right amount. And I think that's a good book, and there's a lot of different ways to study endgames. What are your thoughts, JD?
I also really like the Sherevsky's Endgame manual. I also like um Silman's Endgame book that sort of breaks it down like piece by piece by like by rating. And then also again coming from your own games. But the problem with end games is like you can't really study end games from your own like openings per se, because
Yeah.
like by the time you get to an end game, Lord knows what end game this came from.
I'm gonna
Like,
I'm gonna edit this segment out for when we have our CarolCon endgame course.
yeah.
No one will bring it
Well,
back up.
there are that I mean, but as I was saying this, I was thinking like there are some end games that do arise out of opening or out of opening. For example, if you have a repertoire that's got a lot of IQPs in it, well, then you probably are likely to get that kind of an end game, and you probably should study that structure. Or a common end game that we get in the Carocon is the Tartakower end game, where we have the doubled F pawns, and we very frequently get this where white has the queenside majority, and we have a crippled kingside majority, and that is a common in-game structure that does come out of the opening. So I do think that like you should study those kinds of things. And I think the way to do that, which I can't remember where I read about this, but I really like this idea, is you take you take your opening structure that you get, which and then you take off all the pieces and you just play it as a pawn ending. And then you add in like a set of, you continue to add pieces in, and you start to learn which kinds of openings are holdable and which ones aren't holdable. And doing that with this Tartakower ending, I learned that like we swapped the queens and all the rooks, we were almost always lost.
Yeah,
And so
you
now,
had
so
the game
now,
like that, the one game
yeah,
where
so
everything.
now, yeah, so now I've generalized that like doing it this way, you do kind of learn which pieces you want to keep on the board, which then informs your middle game structure. Because I know that in the Tartakower, I don't want to trade queens, like because doing so is probably going to make me suffer quite a bit.
I think that shows a high level of chess training for yourself because you don't necessarily need to own chess-based software. But if you think historically, what do titled players, top players do? They do exactly that. They love exploring positions in chess space. And I think that's something that's a little bit lost online, even though you can do the same thing. I don't hear about many people just, almost thinking of yourself as a chess scientist and like going into the lab, taking out minor pieces, taking out queens and rooks, resetting up positions, seeing what the engine says. All of those things can help you. So I agree with you, JD. If there's certain opening lines that tend to get common endgames, hammer on those endgames. But if you have other openings that are super sharp, maybe you never look at endgames in those. If it always ends in some kind of pawn storm checkmate,
Uh-huh.
you don't need to look at an endgame in that line, right?
Yeah. Like looking at an end game from like the Marshall Gambit
Right.
is kind of silly because like you're just probably not ever going to get to an end game.
So and that comes,
Somebody's going to get checkmated.
yeah. And that comes back to analyzing based on your own play. Where are you
Yeah.
seeing endgames? Which opening, put that in your takeaways. Which openings are you seeing endgames? Where do you need to work on them? All right, Bob G, should we move on to his?
Yeah.
0% playing. Gotta listen to Birdcell's advice. Hashtag play more blitz in the chat.
Well, that's playing 0% playing fast is what it says. The
Yeah.
next one says 40% playing slow.
Yeah. Well,
And I don't really have a problem with that. I feel reasonably confident that playing fast is for fun and not for learning.
okay, I will say though, if you only play slow, and I've seen multiple instances of this in real life, players I know, OTB, if you only play slow and you only do slow tactics, for example, it's really hard to be good under pressure, to make good, quick decisions because you haven't trained that a ton. Yes, you can get it in your slow games, but not nearly as much as if you sprinkle in even 5% blitz games. Play 10 blitz games a week, 3-0. Even if you hate it and it's frustrating, like it'll help you make quick decisions when you need to. Or 5+5 if you're used to, let's say, 5 delay, something around that.
I may acquiesce that if you want to optimize, that there might be some amount of fast chess that would be optimal. But I think if you're going to err in some direction, you would want to err on not enough fast chess and too much slow chess. I would be willing to bet that like if today you committed to playing only blitz and bullet for the next year and I committed to only playing classical games, and then we compared our respective gains, I'm willing to bet almost anything that I would come out pretty far ahead of you.
Yeah, that's true. So 40% slow games, 15% openings. 15% openings is a little bit high, but I think this is, based on your takeaways. If you find your openings need work, I think Bob has taken on some new openings recently. That does make sense. Use the time currently to get those openings down. I'm going a little bit faster just because I know we have a few to do.
Yeah.
Fast and slow tactics, 12% each. I like that balance. I think on average, players should be about 50-50 fast and slow. What do you think? I know.
I think it goes back to what I said before, based on like where you're at. Like I don't like I think that I could sit here all day long and do 10,000 mate in one puzzles, and I'm not going to get improve any.
That's
Like,
true. Um,
like, because it's just not useful to me. Because I can. Good luck finding a mate in one that I can't solve in 10 seconds. Like,
that's
you
true.
probably can. You probably can, but like, good luck.
But fast tactics aren't necessarily mate in ones. So let's say
Yeah.
you can do mate in threes fast, but it takes you 10 seconds per puzzle.
Yeah.
I think it's still good because it keeps you really sharp and keeps that quick intuition. Thanks, Safuya, for watching. Have a good day. Oh yeah, I see the endgame sparring question. I think that's a great idea. Use endgame sparring with something like 5 plus 15 or 5 plus 30 to get a hang of those time pressure situations. Right, so if you're using 30-second increment OTB, that's a great idea. I've never tried that, but just put a few minutes on the clock in a 30 ink. We need to do that, JD. We'll do it live, endgame training.
All right. Sounds good.
That's a really
Uh,
good idea.
Something that I have done with my coaches, because I work with a couple different people. Uh, I play a tournament game, and then I review the tournament game with them. We talk about it. We talk about the situations, and then we play a number of training games that are from the same line that happen in that, and to try to incorporate the things that we talked about.
That's a really good idea too. So if you're watching this video and you have a coach, take that advice from JD. Use your things you're finding in your games, whether it's your openings, your end games, and train those against your coach. Like that's what they're there for, is to help you, and that's a really efficient way to work on things.
We kind of repeat that process. I played a tournament game. We talk about it, then we play some games to try to incorporate what I just learned, and then we talk about those games, and we play some more games to try and like it continues to like build.
Yeah. 3% strategy. I know this has been something that I was reading that Bob was spending more time on previously. I think it's okay that it's down to 3%, because he does have 10% game review and 3% end games. This is something, Bob and I have a VIP call coming up, so we're going to go more in depth on this. But I think overall, it's pretty good. I would say, just, without looking at any of his recent games, I would say increasing the playing fast a little bit, drop in the playing slow a little bit, and then maybe shifting a little bit of those tactics into the categories below it. That 24% is a lot of time just on tactics, and maybe, like you said, less of the fast tactics. Because I think that's something where you can just review quick tactics a little bit each day. You don't need to be spending hours a week on fast tactics. All right, let's see. James, we don't have much info on James. 40% rapid, 30 game reviews, 20 tactics, 10 openings. James is over 2,000. He might be right around 2,000 to 2,200 range.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is good. Yeah, it's super basic, but
Yeah.
for his rating, I think this is great.
You know what I haven't seen in any of these study plans that I do like to incorporate, and there's quite a bit of data that suggests that it's a good way to study, is nobody's playing guess the move.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody's taking some master game, hiding the notation, and just spending 5 minutes trying to guess the move. And it's lots of strong chess players have suggested that that's a good thing to do. And I reference Peak and some other training, like people who studying, which I think is very meta. All suggest that playing guess the move is important, and I think playing guess the move is actually really useful from a practical stance too, because like maybe I don't have time to dedicate 3 hours to a classical game, but I do have maybe 10 minutes to dedicate to playing two moves
Yeah.
from a master game somewhere, where I find some games that like are from the openings that I want to play, a position that probably could arise in my gameplay, and I spend 10 minutes and I make 2 moves.
It's almost like playing daily chess in a way, but yeah, you can pick and choose and jump around. I like that a lot. It's a game situation. And I think if we were to do another chess goals kind of study survey, I would split out game analysis, because right now it combines analyzing your own games and analyzing games of others, which is not that great. I think it'd be good to separate them out.
And I think playing guess the move probably belongs in the playing category.
Oh, yeah, that could be too. But I mean, if it's, yeah, right, because you're not analyzing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you are, but like, I mean, a game review is still just playing, but you get to do takebacks and have an engine tell you that you were dumb or smart. I don't think that game review and playing have such a clear distinction between them. There's a distinction, but I think it's a bit fuzzier than perhaps we're suggesting.
The data analyst side of me is like, let's split it out into 100 categories. Like, what percent of the time do you play guess the move? What percent of the time do you do 5-minute tactics? It's like people are gonna just be fed up. You have too many questions. Okay, Bird Cell is still in the chat, so now we got it. I'm just gonna give it to you, JD. Give me the review on Bird Cell.
Hold on. Let me pull back up because you don't have this in the.
Oh, he's last page.
Yeah.
Save the best for last. Bird Cell.
Yeah. So this 60% of the time is playing fast or fast tactics, and like only 5% is game review. Okay, he says I'm terrible at it and I don't really enjoy it. So like, this, when I said earlier, you should be doing what you have fun with. But like, I really think that if you're 60% of your time is fast tactics and fast chess, including, it says here that there's bullet, that's a study plan to just enjoy chess and have fun. It's not a study plan to get better at chess, which is fine. There's absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. But I would say that if that's what you're doing, I wouldn't expect to be improving.
And he did say it up above. He's on a serious chess break.
Yeah.
Because I think he was probably burnt out a little bit from his other study plan.
Yeah.
Hashtag play more bullet.
I will admit that I've played an obscene amount of bullet in the past couple months, and I don't know, it's almost like an addiction. Like,
it really is. Adrenaline rush.
I'm bored, I play bullet. I don't know what to do, I play bullet. Like, I'm supposed to be working and work sounds stressful, so I go play some bullet, and like, then I lose a bullet game and I need to fix that by playing some more bullet. And
yeah, though,
but I don't have any illusions that it's making me better at chess.
It could be. I was just gonna say, there is that thing I found in the data. There was this group of players that I classified as speedrunners, based on kind of other video games and stuff. And they would play 95% of the time, and game review 5%. Bird Cell's game reviewing 5% based on this, tactics 25, and playing the rest essentially. So even though it might not be the most efficient way to improve, if you're enjoying it, Bird Cell, and you're on this break from doing kind of like the hard studying, you could still be improving just like this and enjoying it along the way. So I think run with it for a while. Run with it until you feel like, okay, maybe this winter you're ready to get back into more focused study. Just run with it for a few more months, see how it goes, and enjoy it.
And I saw some comments about like losing not being fun, and yeah, it's not fun, but like, I think that it's important to develop a mindset that like you should be happy when you've lost, because if you're not losing, or you're not getting tactics wrong, or you're not screwing up when you're doing your reviews and playing guess the move winner. If all of those are wins or correct solutions or what, you're not learning. Like, you need to be losing. Losing should be a sign of progress, not the opposite.
You know, this is going to be a very random analogy, but this is how I feel about a lot of things in life. If it comes too easy, it's not worth the effort of getting better at it. I've always said I never want to win the lottery for that exact reason. If you said, here's $100 million, like, I don't want that. As crazy as that sounds, I don't want $100 million for doing nothing. If I built some business up and it made $100 million, that's a little different.
So one thing I want to comment that Birdsell just said, he said, the only improvement I expect from Bullet is drilling openings. And I have had that thought myself, and I'm going to say it. It's BS. The openings that people play in Bullet almost have zero overlap with what I see in classical chess. People play the weirdest stuff that you will never see in a classical game. And if you're trying to, like, I just don't believe that you're going to train your openings from Bullet. I had the same idea, and I've spent so much time believing that, and I just don't believe it now.
And this is coming from the guy that faces Hillbilly and England gambits in his OTV classical chess. He's telling you that you will see different things in Bullet.
Yeah, I'm the stuff. Yeah, and you just, for example, in Bullet with the Caro-Kann advance, I almost always get where they play C3 and they don't take on C5.
Mm-hmm.
I have yet to have a classical game where someone played C3, even though in Bullet, that's 95% of what I see.
Yeah, there's another thing at play too. Not just sort of which moves come quicker to the opponents, but the level of your opponents. So for example, OTB, I don't know this for sure, but you might be facing stronger players OTB than you are in Bullet. Let's say your Bullet opponents are 1,700 on average, and your OTBs are 2,000. Maybe you're seeing more C3s a little bit because of that too.
Yeah, well, I mean, my Bullet rating is about 2,200 right now.
Yeah, and so that kind of throws that out.
I'm facing people about my Bullet rating.
Or like, let's say those Bullet players aren't classical players. Maybe they're Bullet specialists, so they don't have that classical training on their openings and things like that.
Here's so many like hippo type openings in Bullet, which I just never.
That's true. Yeah, just moving quick, moderns, hippos,
or the people who just like throw down a sack on F7 or F2 because it's Bullet, and who cares if I just got a -3 position? Because now your king is exposed, and I'm going to attack you because your king's exposed. Like, and I can play ridiculous chess in Bullet and still do well. I played a while spent just totally goofing off. I was just playing like H3, G4, F3, E4, and just like making like the great Stonewall.
Like checkers.
I would just pre-move that for my first 8 moves of the game, and unless my opponent did something that made it illegal, then I would. I got like a 1,800 Bullet rating, pre-moving my first 8 moves of just all making this stupid pawn formation. Like, you can do anything in Bullet and still win.
Yeah. One of my friends that I know outside of chess, I met him first outside of chess. He plays Bullet on chess.com, and his Bullet rating is like, I want to say 1,300 maybe, but he's super fast. And he plays 1-0, and that's all he likes to play. He plays it on his phone. And he challenged me to a match, and we were going to do an adoption match. I was going to try to beat him 10-0. The very first game we play, and I hadn't been playing a lot of 1-0. That was my only excuse. he starts beating me on the clock, but I'm crushing him over the board. But I'm having
Yeah.
trouble finishing him. He was really good at just extending the game. And I
Yeah.
start trying to play faster so I don't flag, and he ended up beating me on the clock and the board. He's rated 1200 bullet. But the thing is that he was really good at bullet.
Yeah.
And I've seen him play over the board, slower chess, and his rating is probably 800, I would guess.
Yeah.
But bullet, he was 1200, and he beat a 2200 that day.
There's a lot, I mean, there's a guy at my chess club that he's 23 something at bullet, and like he went and played a classical over the board tournament and he was playing in the under 1100 section, and he got like 2.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
So Ariel has a good question. So the question then is how to internalize the mindset that learning equals losing. And I think you do that exactly the same way you get better at chess. When you have a position, and we're talking about like, what do I think about the board? I think that you have to have like some self-awareness when you recognize that like I've just lost, and you go, I feel bad about that, and you go, wait, I shouldn't feel bad about that. Losing is learning. And I think you just repeat that and
Yeah.
repeat it and repeat it. And then eventually you stop thinking it and you've generalized it into an intuition. Just like we're talking about generalizing your thinking about chess into an intuition, I think you do the exact same thing with that's how you change that mindset. That's how you change your mindset about anything.
And one thing that's helped me with the self-awareness, because I think that is the key word. If you are playing, let's say, blitz games, and you're playing a ton of games all at once, and you start to feel yourself slipping down that dangerous slope of going on into tilt, you need to catch yourself early and say, I need to stop playing. I need to learn from those games, take a break, internalize it, put it into your intuition, like JD was saying, and then come back to it later. I think the hard thing is when you don't have that option. So, for example, Chicago Open, we shared a room. My start was really rough.
Yeah.
And that was one of the hardest things for me because I knew I had more games coming up, but I had to just try to learn from each game and not let that affect the other games. And I ended up with one of the best last 3 rounds that I've ever had. I came back and just like crushed 3 players in a row at the end. So it's something
the exact opposite experience.
Right. But it's something where you just have to try to almost step outside your own thinking process and say, all right, I'm catching myself being too upset or whatever it is. Can I alter it and just keep working at it? Over time, it'll improve. Fake it until you make it.
Yeah, exactly. It really is fake it till you make it. And so, funny story. Super hilarious. So I had some people come to my door. They were coming sort of regularly, and they were trying to convert me to, I don't know, some religion. I don't know which one. And I'm not going to take the risk of offending someone. But I was asking them about faith. Okay, I was working from home. I didn't have anything better to do. Actually, I wasn't even. So I asked them, like, how do you develop faith? Like, how do I believe in a God I just don't believe in? Like, how do you do that? And their honest, legitimate answer was to pretend you have faith until you do, and eventually you will. Like they literally told me how you become a good practitioner of their religion is fake it till you make it.
Interesting. I believe it though, because I think the mind can really go different directions based on external influences.
I think eventually you forget that you're faking it.
Makes sense. It's no different than social media, how you can go down some rabbit holes and get more and more extreme on whatever you're thinking because it's feeding you those thoughts.
Here's another incredibly stupid example that's sort of hilarious.
Okay.
So there's the word sorry, right? I say, I'm sorry. And for whatever ridiculous reason, I decided I wanted to start pronouncing it sorry instead of sorry. I don't know why. I just did. And so every time I said the word sorry, I would repeat in my head, sorry. And eventually it it just started happening. And I didn't think about it anymore. I just changed the way I pronounced that word that I'd been saying for, at this point in my life, I'd been saying it for like 25 years, one particular way. And sort of slowly just started saying it a different way. And it was very conscious for a period of time. And then it was unconscious.
Yeah. All right, should we wrap up there? We're about
Yeah.
42 after.
I got to get back to work and, keep a job so that I can afford to stream.
All right, we'll have to do more of these. This was fun. I'll advertise over the email list in the next one too. We'll see if we can keep slowly growing them. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a good rest of your Friday.
All right.